Instagram feed with a set of crosshairs over her shoulder. Just a short time ago, Roger Stone formally apologized for his post about Judge Amy Berman Jackson. We blurred her face out for a concern over her safety. Stone writes, "Please inform the court that the photograph and comment today was improper and should not have been posted. I had no intention of disrespecting the court and humbly apologize to the court for the transgression." Stone had earlier said the photo was misinterpreted and that any inference it was meant to somehow threaten the judge or disrespect the court is categorically false. He blamed the posting on one of his assistants. Joining us now is USA Today columnist and CNN political analyst Kirsten Powers, former Trump campaign aide Michael Caputo, and former Obama acting Solicitor General Neil Katyal. Neil, is what Stone posted on Instagram legal? Isn't it a crime to threaten a judge? Does that post meet the standard?
Yes, there are two issues. One is about Stone, the other is about Trump. With respect to Stone, it's undoubtedly a crime. 18 U.S.C. 115 says that it is a crime to threaten a federal judge. Now, he's tried to walk it back, saying, oh, I didn't mean it, and so on. The crosshairs were some logo or something like that. But let's be honest here. I mean, this is a photo that he tweets attacking a federal judge with a big photo of her and a crosshairs on top of it. For the federal judiciary, which works so hard to try and safeguard all of us, this is a real problem. And then the other problem is Trump. You haven't heard a word from him about this. I mean, he talks all about the NFL protests and this and that whenever that happens. And here you've got one of his own closest confidants doing this, and you hear deafening silence. And, we've put up with a lot in the past, Anderson, but the idea that, that the president has silence when it comes to something like this and something that is such a core democratic value, protection of our federal judges, particularly at a time when some have been assassinated, is, I think, just an unforgivable thing.
Neil, could that apology spare Stone from having his bail revoked?
He can try. I think, Judge Jackson is a phenomenal judge, respected by conservatives and liberals alike. I think she's not going to view this personally. I think she'll view it by the law. But I think by the law, this kind of stuff does constitute a threat. So there's potentially new criminal activity and criminal charges that could be brought. But at a minimum, I think it really does suggest this guy shouldn't be anywhere near bail or having the ability to communicate like this again.
Michael, potential legal fallout aside, is what Stone posted in any way defensible?
It's hard to defend something that's stupid, really. I mean, I've known Roger for 35 years. I haven't spoken to him since he was arrested out of an abundance of caution and on advice of our attorneys. But I understand his frustration with the way that things have gone down for him since his arrest. There is some kind of an explanation that it's a neo-pagan symbol of some sort, not a crosshairs, but this kind of thing can be misinterpreted pretty quickly. And I want to, for a moment, step back and say that, and commend Kirsten for what she posted today on her Twitter. She was talking about how she's been reflecting on the way things have gone down for all of us in recent months and talked about, showing more grace in this mess of life. And life has gotten so really messy. Roger Stone's life has gotten really messy recently. This affidavit of apology to the court, I think, is a step in the right direction. He shouldn't have done this. He knows this now. I think he thinks it would be remarkable if Judge Jackson were able to give him a fair trial. I think it would be remarkable if the judge were able to forgive him for this. I'm sorry?
Do you think the president should condemn what Stone did?
I don't think that it really is in the president's, purview to do this. I mean, you could say that Roger made a mistake. You could say that this is somewhat indefensible. People call it crosshairs. People call it a neo-pagan symbol. The fact of the matter is, Roger shouldn't have done it. He regrets it. He pulled it down. And I'm hoping that the judge sees this as another, happenstance in the mess of life.
No.
But what about...
I'm sorry, how do you think that it couldn't be part of the president's obligation to do something? And this is a president who tweets about SNL and NFL and everything else. This is the core thing a president does, stand up for the rule of law. He takes an oath that the law shall be faithfully executed. How could you say that isn't something the president should be condemning?
Well, Neil, I know you don't like the president's tweets. I've heard you complain about it for a while. Maybe the president will tweet about this. I'm not sure.
I'm asking for one.
Maybe he will, Neil. Maybe he will.
Kirsten, where do you stand on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in a normal world, the president probably would condemn something like this. You would think that the president would want to be standing up for the judiciary, but I think we all know we don't really live in a normal world. And I think even if you were to give Michael Cohen the benefit of the doubt on the crosshairs, he wrote a bunch of crazy stuff about the judge. I'm sorry, what did I say?
Michael Cohen.
Oh, okay. Even if we were to give him the benefit of the doubt, then you have to look at everything he was saying. It's a show trial. It's the deep state. It's like this judge is part of some sort of cabal and out to get him. I mean, I don't understand in what scenario this is normal behavior or acceptable behavior or why it would even be a good idea.
Neil, I want to ask you about...
I think Roger Stone's attorneys agree with you.
Yeah. Neil, I want to ask you about the ongoing questions around President Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin, particularly something that former FBI acting director Andrew McCabe said on 60 Minutes. I just want to play it for our viewers.
The president launched into several unrelated diatribes. One of those was commenting on the recent missile launches by the government of North Korea. And essentially, the president said he did not believe that the North Koreans had the capability to hit us here with ballistic missiles in the United States. And he did not believe that because President Putin had told him they did not. President Putin had told him that the North Koreans don't actually have those missiles.
And U.S. intelligence was telling the president what?
Intelligence officials in the briefing responded that that was not consistent with any of the intelligence our government possesses. To which the president replied, I don't care, I believe Putin.
Now, if you're Robert Mueller, are you hearing this on 60 Minutes for the first time, or is this already part and parcel of your investigation?
I suspect he probably knows some of this because, I think there have been a number of interviews. But, I mean, to hear it in that way, I don't care, the president said about the intelligence community assessments. I believe Putin. That is an amazing thing. I mean, our intelligence community works so hard day in and out to try and get it right. And, I understand that there's a lot of people who have suspicion about the intelligence community. When I was 27 in my first tour of the Justice Department, I was a lefty and thought, oh, these people are nightmares and so on. Within a week, you learn the truth about the intelligence community. I mean, these people work incredibly hard on a non-political basis. If anything, they might skew a little conservative, but they just work hard to get it right. And here you've got the president saying, I don't believe them. I believe our mortal enemy, Putin. I think Mueller and the Congress are going to look into that.
Kirsten, it shouldn't be surprising, though. I mean, the president said essentially the same thing in front of the entire world in Helsinki when he said that, Dan Coates had said one thing, but that Putin had given a very strong, manly, powerful response that he believed.
Right. Yeah, right. So I think had that not happened, maybe you could say, well, possibly, this doesn't ring true or it doesn't sound right. But of course, as you pointed out, we've seen this movie before. And so it's shocking still to think that the president would think this. The president of the United States would possibly believe somebody like Putin over his own intelligence community. But we have seen it before. And I think, there's been a lot of talk about how inappropriate all of this was about, the alleged talk of 25th Amendment and so on, and these concerns about the president. But I think, if you have to kind of step back and ask, why would they be having these concerns and why would they be behaving in the way they were behaving if there wasn't something really unusual going on? And that's basically the story that's being told, which is that this was so alarming, what they were seeing, and so unusual. So it's not just a bunch of people sitting around like, hey, let's maybe do the 25th Amendment. There was something really behind it. I don't think they ever really were going to invoke it, but they were seriously concerned.
Kirsten Paris, Michael Caputo, Neil Katyal, thank you very much. A quick reminder, be sure to tune in tomorrow when Andrew McCabe joins us live right here on the broadcast. The field of Democratic presidential, no question that former Vice President Joe Biden is by far the biggest Democratic name not yet announced for his party's presidential nomination. He certainly has the name recognition, and even without a formal declaration, he sits atop most polls for next year's primaries. Over the weekend, he said a decision would be coming soon.
No, I haven't reached a decision. I'm in the process of doing that, and I will, in the near term, let everyone know what that decision is. I think there is sufficient amount of time to do that.
Joining me now from the site of CNN's town hall with presidential candidate Senator Amy Klobuchar, senior White House correspondent Jeff Zeleny. He's there along with former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod. So, David, what exactly does a sufficient amount of time mean for Vice President Biden in a primary field that's already this big?
Look, I think if I were he, I would want to shorten the race as much as possible. He has a lot of assets that he can count on. He's well known. Some of the candidates are not. So, I think he is going through the steps that one does to check themselves as well as whether the support is there. But I don't think he can wait forever. I think, probably by the end of March, if he hasn't made a decision, the decision will have been made.
Jeff, are a lot of Democratic voters saying that they want to wait to see what Biden decides before backing another candidate? He obviously, has goodwill among New Hampshire Democrats.
He does. I mean, voters clearly want to know what he's going to do, but I think the ones I talked to at least are giving him some space for now, as David said. But it is the big question mark that's hanging over this race. I think the real, sense of anxiousness is from other people who aren't in yet. And because if the former vice president jumps in, that is going to have an effect on others who aren't in the race and perhaps on some who are in the race. But right now I get the sense that it's some donors who want to pick sides or some other candidates to position themselves much more than voters. Voters actually are pretty patient now. Very few people are actually signing on the dotted line at this point. They're shopping around for candidates. Many I talked to want to see him, but I think they will allow him to do it on his own time.
And David, if Vice President Biden enters the race, how do Democratic members of Congress who supported the Obama administration run against Joe Biden? Does it become much more about a generational shift?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if I were look, he is a very experienced guy. He was at the Munich Security Conference. He was brandishing that in the last in the last 24 hours in a way that makes clear what his strengths are as a candidate. But the flip side of all that experience is age. And if I were running against him, I'd probably give him the gold watch and thank him for 45 years of great service to the country, and then say, but what we need to do is look to the future. And, I don't think you'll see, at least at the outset, overt attacks. Now, he has some vulnerabilities because of votes that he's cast that are not pleasing to progressives in the party that may come to the fore later. But in the initial offing, I think people will not go right at him.
Is that why you said earlier the idea of, shortening the time he's exposed to the full race?
Yeah, I think so. Look, whether it is illusory or not, he is a front runner right now. And so, I think the shortening the race is in his favor. The minute you become a candidate, you are a target of some sort of the media and others. And so he may want to shorten that period a bit. But as Jeff said, there's a lot of anxiousness among activists, among donors, and among people who want to work in these campaigns. And what you don't want to do is lose your ability to sign those people up because they have gone elsewhere. So that's why I think he has, maybe 6 weeks left, and then he has to give us a decision one way or another.
Jeff, just briefly, you're in Manchester. We're having the Amy Klobuchar town hall at 10 o'clock tonight. She's talked about working with Republicans. Is there much of an appetite at this point in the Democratic primary for that kind of message?
Well, we'll find out if there is or not. I mean, there's definitely a movement to the left in this party. It's been happening really over the last 10 years or so, certainly during the Trump administration, all the talk of Medicare for all, the Green New Deal. But I am struck by what Senator Klobuchar is saying, that she's talking about how she's worked with Republicans, about common ground. So there is at least a slice of the electorate that wants that. But boy, there's also a slice that wants some red meat here. So she has to do both things. But the Democrats I talked to want to do one thing overall: to win back the White House. There's not a clear consensus on how to do that.
No. Jeff Zeleny, David Axelrod, thanks very much. Look forward to that town hall. That's the CNN Presidential Town Hall in New Hampshire with Senator Amy Klobuchar. Don Lemon is moderating tonight. It starts at 10 o'clock here on CNN. We have breaking news tonight on a vacant post at the top of the Trump administration. We're now hearing that the president may be considering nominating former Michigan GOP Senate candidate John James for UN ambassador after Heather Nauert withdrew her name Saturday. According to a source close to the White House, he sounded out the idea with trusted advisors at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend, saying he's been very impressed by the Iraq War vet and sees him as a rising star. President Trump never sent Nauert's formal nomination to the Senate after choosing her in December. The State Department spokeswoman and former Fox News anchor has faced questions about lack of experience for the job. She says the last 2 months have been grueling for her family. She's also facing complications over a foreign-born nanny who didn't have a proper work visa. Much more to come on this breaking news in our next hour. Still to come, even more twists tonight in the evolving case of Empire star Jussie Smollett. What we're now learning from the brothers first arrested in connection with the alleged incident, they are talking not only to police, to the media today. Did they help stage a hoax? The mystery deepens ahead. It's been nearly 3 weeks since Empire actor Jussie Smollett reported he'd been attacked in what sounded at the time like a possible hate crime. The story exploded all over the news and the internet, still dominating headlines now that it's taken a very different turn. Question is, was it all a hoax? That's what investigators are strongly considering. Smollett is no longer talking to police who wanted to question him again today. The brothers arrested in connection with his case have more to say tonight. Randy Kay had the latest.
We started tussling. You know, it was very icy, and we ended up tussling by the stairs. Fighting. There was a second person involved who was kicking me in my back, and then it just stopped, and they ran off.
Empire star Jussie Smollett sharing details of the alleged attack. He told Chicago police that he was heading home around 2 a.m. when two men approached him, yelling racial and homophobic slurs. As Smollett tells it, the men beat him, poured an unknown chemical on him, and put a rope around his neck. Later, he went further, telling police that the attackers told him, "This is MAGA country," referring to President Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again." The actor's colleagues, along with some celebrities and politicians, rushed to Smollett's defense, rallying around him, considering it an example of what's wrong in America in 2019. Chicago police, however, struggled to find any images of the attack on surveillance video, though they did release this image of two men they wanted to question.
I don't have any doubt in my mind that that's them. Never did.
By February 13th, police get a break in the case, or so they think. They arrest two brothers of Nigerian descent, the men seen in the photo from the surveillance video.
Police reportedly raid their home and find an Empire script and two hats. According to two law enforcement sources familiar with the investigation, records show that the two brothers purchased the rope found around Smollett's neck at a hardware store in Chicago. Police reveal that one of the men appeared on Empire as an extra.
Still, doubt about Smollett's case begins to grow.
It feels like if I had said it was a Muslim or a Mexican or someone black, I feel like the doubters would have supported me a lot much more.
Within 48 hours of their arrest, the men are released. Chicago police citing the discovery of new evidence. In a joint statement issued to WBBM, the men said, "We are not racist, we are not homophobic, and we are not anti-Trump. We were born and raised in Chicago and are American citizens." And now, in another bizarre twist, CNN learned that the same two men told investigators they were paid to take part in a hoax.
Who the would make something like this up or add something to it or whatever it may be? I can't even.
A police spokesman confirming that information received from the individuals questioned by police earlier has shifted the trajectory of the investigation. In response, Smollett's attorney pointing out that one of the men questioned was the actor's personal trainer, saying the actor is being further victimized by claims he played a role in his own attack. For a case that may have appeared cut and dried at the start, there are now more questions than answers. with Chicago police wondering if the actor will ever agree to their request for another meeting.
Randy joins us now. And this is such a bizarre case. For him to go on GMA.
Big interview.
And, cry and, double down and triple down. There were a lot of politicians who weighed in very early on in this. Are they backtracking now?
Yeah, certainly the Democratic politicians, the Democratic candidates, looking at 2020 are getting a lot of attention because Smollett has said that he thinks he was targeted because of things that he has said about Donald Trump. So when news of the alleged attack broke, you have California Senator Kamala Harris coming out.
By the way, is the world really hanging on the words of Jussie Smollett's commentary on the Trump administration?
Apparently,
is it that well known?
Apparently, he's putting it out there, and that's why he thinks he was targeted. He does. That's exactly what he said. He goes hard against 45.
Yes.
Those are his exact
45
words.
Spends nights awake worried about Jussie
He's probably
Smollett's
watching the latest
comments.
right now. You know it. But Kamala Harris said that, in the very early days of this, said that she described him as kind and gentle and said that we must confront hate. But now today, being in New Hampshire, she was asked about that tweet, and she said something in a very different tone. She actually told reporters, I think the facts are still unfolding. So she's sort of walking this back a little bit. She's very concerned about the initial allegation that he made about what might have happened. She said we should all take this seriously. She's now saying there should be an investigation. And she also said that she would only comment on this again after the investigation is complete.
Well, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Randy Kaye, thanks very much. On this President's Day, President Trump has been stewing about former acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe, who will be on this program tomorrow night. McCabe is dropping all kinds of, explosive